My name is Clara, and I have a Bachelor's of Science in Graphic Design from Arizona State University. And these are all the projects I did in my 4 years of undergrad. Before I get started showing all the projects, I just wanted to say that I wasn't really sure what to expect when going into university. I think a lot of people don't exactly know what the program is going to be like, so I hope this video gives some people an idea of what to expect in the design program at ASU. It's set up in a way that the first 2 years you learn about the principles of graphic design, how to see things properly, what looks good, what doesn't, why it doesn't look good. It just helps you get an eye for things. You're not just automatically jumping into client work, for example. I think the first 2 years throw a lot of people off and discourage people from continuing in the program because it's not what people expect. And I think people expect to do projects and use Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop and InDesign, but I have to say that this program was better than what I could have ever expected. I think I learned so much and I quickly recognized stuff that I didn't before just because of the way you are taught things in the program and because our professors were so amazing. So let's get started. I'm gonna go through all of the projects I did in my 4 years at ASU, and I'm gonna break them up by semester. And I'm gonna put all the timestamps in the description so you can quickly jump to each semester. I moved to the side so I can put projects on the screen over here and also so I can hold things up. So freshman year, fall semester, we had 3 graphic design classes. The first one is GRA 101, Designing Life, which is taught by Haywood, who is a really interesting guy. He has a background in psychology, so he does counseling for students sometimes, which is very helpful. Thankfully, I never had to use his counseling services. He starts every class with meditation, and it really puts you in a good mindset. And the class was kind of interesting. It's not a typical studio class, it's more of a lecture type class, but we did a couple projects. The first project we did was the hero's journey, and I created a pop-up. It's kind of been squished sitting in my closet, but it looks like this, My Hero's Journey, and then you open it up and each different layer represents a different part in My Hero's Journey. This was a really fun project and I love how it turned out. I'm gonna be keeping this even though it's totally squished. And then we also did a time audit, just a really simple project. We basically kept track of what we were spending our time on throughout the week. And I think it was just a way to give students a reality check of what they were spending their time on because the school year does get busier. So the first studio class is GRA 121 and it's Principles of Graphic Design. These are usually like 3-hour-long classes. So the first project we had was the black and white interaction. So this project is pretty iconic because it's your first studio project and it kind of drives people insane. So this is it. I know, it's just a black square, but it's painted with plaka and then just a pencil, and everything has to be perfect to the millimeter. And then we do a printed version using Illustrator, and then the inverse and the printed version. These projects are teaching you hand-eye coordination and just being able to actually see the difference to a millimeter. Next project was line interaction. So again, we had to paint this with plaka, which is a really interesting paint. And these projects come with a variety of problems. You have to paint them on board that bend when you put too much paint on the front. So then you have to paint the back to prevent the board from warping too much. All of these have to be insanely crispy lines. And then we have the printed version that we did on Illustrator. Now, line interaction continued with you had to select a verb and then you would manipulate the lines based off of the verb. So my verb was ripple. So within this square, I made the lines ripple. And then I did the next layer. And then the final one, you can't see that much of a difference, but it's just this extra line. And for the line interaction, I just wanted to show that you have to do every project physically and by hand before you do it digitally on the computer. So I just wanted to show that I actually had to ripple paper using string and tape. So I have just like tons of versions of paper that I cut and then pulled with string. Then we have color interaction. So you were supposed to pick a picture or a painting, you know, some type of image as your start. So I selected this photo that I had taken myself. I just really liked the colors in it. Then you were supposed to color match the colors within the image. And this is what I ended up with. And to color match it, you are using a color aid, which is a gigantic block of colored paper, and just finding the closest color. You were also using paint swatches or paint chips from like Home Depot, Lowe's. So basically, you were going into Home Depot and Lowe's and taking one paint chip from every single one just so you could find something close to the colors in your photo. There was a version of this. It was made up of paint chips and color aid. So this is just the printed version. And then you were taking this, which is like all the Pantone colors, and matching the paint chip and the color aid to this to get this. And then you also throw in the problem of the printers being inconsistent or the printers breaking down, and you have to switch to a new printer which has different colors. Yeah, it was a nightmare, and it cost hundreds of dollars to get stuff printed. And I don't know how the freshmen did this project, but I don't think they had to do any of this printing because of Corona, so they really lucked out. So bless their souls. Continuing color interaction, you picked colors from the image and you did value matching. There's two different colors, but their values match. This was another one. These color projects were really cool. These projects were like an optical illusion. These blues look the same, right? Think again. These colors look drastically different, right? Just very cool when you finally got the colors to work. So then we have texture interaction, which was one of my favorite projects that semester because I just really like different types of texture. So we started off with using different objects and plaka to create different textures. So I had string as one of them. This was some type of toy from like the dollar store. So once we had picked the textures that we wanted, we had to do them at 10%, 50%, and then basically 90 to 95%. These are the dark ones, obviously. They're almost completely black. And then these are the 10%, obviously. So the one I ended up picking was the strings. So these are the printed versions. And then our last project was three-dimensional interaction, which was basically creating a 3D object using the black on white and the white on black interaction. So I decided to make a metal box with a light inside, and then I would poke holes to let the light shine through, and that basically created the black on white interactions. I don't have the box because I threw it away because it was taking up a lot of space, but these are photographs of the box. So this is the black on white, and then this is the white on black. It was very labor intensive poking all those holes in the box. I think I got a couple blisters doing it. Some people made theirs out of acrylic, some people made it out of wood. For some reason I chose metal. You also take a class freshman year that's GRA 111, and it's graphic design history with Professor Minnis, who is such a sweetheart, and that's just a lecture class. It goes over history throughout the year. So that is the end of first semester freshman year, and now we'll move on to freshman year spring semester. So second semester freshman year, the the spring semester, you have 2 design classes. GRA 112, which is Graphic Design History number 2, basically a continuation of the previous class, taught again by Professor Minnis, lecture-based, more design history through the year. And then you have your second studio class, GRA 122, Graphic Design Principles number 2. And the first project you do is pencil line studies and pencil sign studies. And basically, I don't know how to describe this. Basically, you have to shave your pencil down. I'll insert video of what it looks like, but you shave your pencil down so it has like a square tip, and then you draw lines, consistent distance between all the lines, and you have to do it with a gradient too. So darkest top, middle light, and then it goes to dark again. Very painstaking, very excruciating. They have to be perfectly straight and perfectly spaced. Really requires a steady hand. And then you also do sign studies, so it's pencil again, but in different shapes, so diagonal, horizontal, vertical, and then curved as well. And then you do it with like normal letters as well. And then you have uppercase letter form study. So this is where you start to make your own set of type. Basically, you're making your own alphabet. Like I said, everything is done first by hand before it's ever done digitally. Basically, the first letter we did was capital H, and it's cut by hand out of just like black paper. And then once it's been approved by the professor, then you do it digitally. For uppercase letter forms, we did HEAO. This is how mine turned out. Everyone's set of letters looked slightly different. Obviously some were similar, but none of them were exactly the same. And then we did our H with serifs and kind of different weights as well. So we have slab serif, regular serifs with curves. We also used HEAO, which we had designed to create a paragraph. This basically helps us learn RAG, which is the way a paragraph ends, and it's just made of the HEAOs that I designed. Pretty funky. And then we also did it with color, which is really fun to look at. And then we did uppercase letter form division study. So then we picked one of the letters that we had designed. I picked O. So you were supposed to divide the letter into 8 equal sections. I thought O would be the easiest to evenly divide. So in each part, I'm taking away one section of the O. And then we used 1 and 2 divisions to create a paragraph just of O's. And these are all the O's with 1 or 2 sections missing. This is another paragraph of O's with I think 5 or 6 sections missing. Finally, a wide variety of O's with different amounts of sections missing. Also, end of freshman year, we had the capstone, the critical applied project. Apparently they've taken this away and they're accepting more people into the graphic design program just to be more inclusive. Obviously the capstone was a big deal. It prevented people from getting into the program, and it just kind of narrowed the amount of students that were in the program. And they kind of change it every year, but usually there's like 5 mini projects you have to do within a certain amount of time. So that is the end of second semester freshman year, and now we're on to first semester sophomore year. So for the fall semester of sophomore year, you have 4 graphic design classes and 3 studio classes. This is definitely one of the hardest semesters for a lot of people because the workload is a lot, with there being 3 studio classes. Like I said, each studio class is usually 3 hours or longer, and it's a lot of work with all the projects that are going on at the same time. So the first studio class is GRA 220, or Design Drawing 1. Look who came and visited! Okay, he will sit in my lap while I talk about Design Drawing 1. This class teaches you how to do traditional drawing. The catalog description is drawing as language to explore and communicate ideas, development of drawing aptitude as language, and process for graphic design thinking. This class basically taught me how to draw proportionally. I'm going to insert photos of my drawings. We had a lines and ellipses one, which was practicing drawing straight lines, and then ellipses, which was the basis of a lot of drawings. Then we have our first plane drawing, which is the plane that objects sit in. Then we have a cylinder sleeping, and then a sphere. And then we had to draw an object containing a cylinder or a sphere. The object I chose was a light bulb, so it contained a sphere. The object that people chose really varied, and the objects really ranged in difficulty. Obviously, some people are better at drawing traditionally than others, especially if they have a background in drawing. You know, some people come into the program not knowing how to draw, which is completely fine. And then I also wanted to show my sketchbook, which was something we had to do consistently throughout the semester. So first I started off with just doing like random drawings, which was fine, but it's obviously not what you were supposed to. You know, just some like botanical stuff, a mushroom. I did this heart, an elephant, and a hand. The teacher was like, you guys need to start doing drawings that reflect the type of work we're doing in class. It was a lot of plain drawings, you know, finding objects and then just drawing them how we would in class. And these were pretty quick, so they are not very proportionally correct. They're kind of random. A mirror I drew, you know. They're not perfect, but they allowed us to practice proportions and the stuff we were learning in class. And then we have GRA 221 letter form, which was one of my least favorite classes I took in the program. Oh well, you can't like every single class you take. The first project we did was pen studies, which was a continuation of pencil studies, but this time you were using ink and a quill. I'll insert what we used to draw, and I'll also put in some photos of my pen study. So then we also had lowercase letter form studies, which was a continuation of the type we had created last semester, which was the uppercase letter form studies. So again, everything was drawn physically with Plaka before it was ever put into the computer and translated digitally. I have some of my painted letters, this M, an N, an O. This O gave me so much trouble. I redid it 11 times. An I, an R. Like, when I look at these letters now, I'm like, whoa, like this looks so bad. Like, I can tell what's wrong with it now, but when you were first doing it, you didn't see things right away. And like now, I'm like, this part looks so freaking funky. And obviously, like, all the letters have to relate to each other, be part of the same type family. This P, this looks way too thick now, but I wasn't able to see these things before. But because of what I learned, I can see the things now naturally. A, which I did 15 times, and now looking at it, it looks like complete shit. But, you know, I learned through all of these trials, and I learned that, oh, this looks like shit because this reason, you know. And I can see it now. I couldn't before, but I had to do all of this to be able to see it instinctually and naturally. So while the work that I didn't turn out perfectly, I wouldn't know what I know now without doing it and doing it wrong, basically. So part of the lowercase letter form studies, we had to do this with the N's we had drawn, and this. And the H is from the previous semester. We did this paragraph with the letters we made. Right now I can tell my T is way too thick compared to all the letters. It just stands out. So every year they do a different word, and then they have to do all the letters within the word. And our word was experimentation, and it was way longer than previous year's words. I mean, look at how many letters are in this. And like I said, the T just stands out by how thick it is. I was definitely not the best in the class by any means. And then the last project we did was the paragraph project, which was basically the beginning of a project we would do next semester. We had to pick a graphic design principle we had studied freshman year, and then a topic, basically a fascination we had as a child. And my fascination was bags. I loved bags as a kid. packing them, repacking them. So my paragraph was, as a child, I would pack all my toys in bags or backpacks and carry them around. Nowadays, I pack notebooks and art supplies to bring with me to coffee shop. Texture gives tactility and depth to designs. This was my favorite project last year as the intensity of textures were manipulated. Bags are constructed out of many different types of textures like canvas, leather, fur, and snakeskin. The texture of a bag changes the functionality from durable to a status symbol. I will research how a bag's texture dictates its purpose. So that was my paragraph project. And now we're getting into GRA 222, which was the first visual communication class. So these projects I'm going to go through rapid fire because there's a lot of little projects. And like I said, everything was done physically and by hand before it was done digitally. So these were dynamic and static composition. So these are obviously static composition, and these are dynamic composition. These are defining space through value and placement. This one as well. And these are tension to achieve optical balance. These are expanding upon the Fibonacci sequence. Activating figure ground to make multiple planes. So all of these circles were cut out by hand and then layered. And this was my color version, and I can show you what the physical one looks like. So first I selected the colors, making sure they created a gradient, and then I glued them all on here. Leaf gradation study. And these were made with actual leaves that we had to collect ourselves. I drove all the way to Flagstaff to collect leaves because we live in the frickin' desert. But this is how mine turned out. You have two gradients going inverse. I actually kept my boards. So this is the inside layer. These are actual real leaves. And then this is the outside layer. Real leaves. Then we have a comparison of form where we had to find different textures and shape on the internet and in magazines, and then create something that's very, very similar. There's a lot of these, so I'm going to go through them quickly. This was line continuation. This was letter form. And then the last graphic design class you take second semester sophomore year is GRA 225, Communication and Interaction Design Theory, which is taught by Patrick, and it's much more of a lecture class. There's not really any projects because it's not a studio class. But Patrick was a great professor and it was pretty interesting. So this leads us to second semester sophomore year, the spring semester, and you only had to take 2 graphic design classes, which were 2 studio classes. We're going to start with GRA 223, typography. So the first project was paragraph research, which was a continuation of the paragraph you had written the previous semester about a fascination you had as a child. These projects really ranged in what they were because everyone's fascination was different, and we were also given a lot of freedom as to what we wanted to do with them. Some people took photographs of things, and they also presented the final projects very differently. As a reminder, my fascination was bags. Basically, what I decided to do was create 3 designer bags out of material that was very cheap to contrast the high price point of designer bags and then their cheap material to see if the texture determines their functionality. I'll show the bags on the screen next to me, but I created a Birkin bag out of paper lunch bags, a Chanel bag out of burlap, and a Louis Vuitton Neverfull out of plastics. And I created a book with a fold out of the bags. Kind of like a cover page, my paragraph, which I read to you guys earlier. Here is the Birkin out of paper lunch bags, the Chanel out of burlap, and the Louis Vuitton Neverfull. So I chose to present it in this book made out of paper lunch bags. And then the second project was book cover typography. So we were given the book, which was Pioneers of Modern Typography, and it had a lot of different authors. I'm just going to go through this quickly again because there's a lot of different versions. So we manipulated it with lines. And then with shapes. And everything is done physically before it's done digitally. And then color. The final project we had was the calendar, which is where we got to pick a topic that we could display change over 3 months. So the topic I chose was coffee because I'm obsessed with coffee. And I did the 3 months that coffee is grown and processed and then transported to its destination before it's roasted and then ground up and then created into your cup of coffee. So it starts off in August in Brazil. So first I'm showing the coffee growing, and then September the coffee is processed and it's dried, so it can be like honey processed or sun dried, and so it's getting smaller. And then it is the outer casing of the coffee is removed, so now it looks like the coffee bean. Before it was the coffee cherry. It's being transported the 3rd month to the United States, and then it'll be roasted so it gets kind of bigger, and then it's ground, and then it's your cup of coffee. Obviously I liked this project because I liked my topic, which was coffee, and I got to play around with texture because I got to stamp coffee beans to create the texture of a coffee bean here. And then I used part of my texture project to create this. And then I did the bottom of a coffee cup to create this texture. And the second class you have to take second semester sophomore year is GRA 224 Visual Communication number 2. So the first project was complex object translations, which was a continuation of the complex object we had drawn the previous semester, and mine was a light bulb. Basically, we were supposed to translate this digitally and also paint it with Plaka. This was my wireframe that I did digitally based off of the wireframe I had drawn, and this was my painted light bulb. Honestly, I was not good at this at all. And then we had advanced transparency. So first we were supposed to fold paper into different shapes. And then we picked our favorite one. So my favorite one was this one. First we showed the transparency, basically the amount of light that can go through the paper based off of the fold, and then the inverse. This was not adjusted, so you can see the difference. It's darker because it's on top. It has more layers. And then we did it with color. And then we had gesture drawings, which was something I was not very good at either. We were drawing gesturally different objects, usually fruits or vegetables because they have very organic shapes. The object I ended up going with for my final gesture drawing was a garlic, and I'll put in a photo of what my final gesture drawing was, but another pain in the ass. And then I wanted to show you, we had to continue with our sketchbook from the previous semester, but this time we were drawing buildings, and I just wanted to show you how bad I was in the beginning and how much better I got. Like I said, like these classes were a pain in the butt for me because I did not have a background in traditional drawing, but I got so much better, and you can really tell by these drawings. Okay, this was my first drawing, and it is so bad. This one it looks like a child drew it. This one's, you know, slightly better. I'll flip through. But you can tell, like, I have proportions down better. I have angles. These are some of the final ones I did. And my teacher said, I'm gonna give you an A- just because of how much improvement your drawings were. And I was like, thank you, and thank God for that. So that is the end of sophomore year. So now we have the first semester of junior year. And junior year was honestly my favorite year because of the projects. Well, I don't know. Junior and senior year were definitely my favorite years in the program because the professors were amazing. You have this community of peers. Everyone knows each other because we've been in the same classes the previous 2 years. We have this sense of we've gone through the same struggles. We've gone through the same shit. We've all had to overcome the same problems, and we've relied on each other to determine the solutions for all these problems, basically. So there's a real sense of community and understood empathy, and, you know, we all kind of realize that it's better to help each other grow than to try to tear each other down and compare our work to each other. It's best to learn from each other, and you realize that everyone has such different styles of graphic design work that it's silly to compare your work to other people. So, first class of first semester junior year is GRA 321, Technology for Design 1. So this class is a studio class, and it's kind of interesting because you have some technology projects like coding a website, which a lot of people had never done before, including me. And then you have some like traditional graphic design projects like logo and branding and stuff like that. So the first project was a business system for yourself, and our professor said, next time we have class, I want 100 different versions of a business card made. So these are all the different versions I had to do. Like that is what you have to go through in this program. But honestly, it teaches you to be innovative, and everyone doesn't end up with the same type of business card. So we had to design a business card, an envelope, a letterhead, and a folder for all of it to go in. So this is my folder. I designed a pattern with peonies and lavender, which are two of the tattoos I have, so they really reflect me personally and also my ideal design style. These are the letters I designed with the pattern on the back flap. This is my old address, guys. So, and then we have a blank one, and then, you know, to someone. And then we have our letterhead, so an example cover letter, a blank letterhead, and then our resume. And then our business card is right here, and I put a peony on the back. And then we had to design a booklet with all the process for our business system. So the final versions, you know, some process of the letterhead, process of the envelopes, the type we used, the end. And then we had to design a website for Charlie's Cafe, which is a cafe within the design school. This was my first time coding, and it was not the best experience, but it taught me that I don't want to do web design as a graphic designer. And these projects that you don't like are still valuable because it teaches you the types of graphic design work that you don't want to do later on when you have your degree. So yeah, now I know I don't want to do web design. And then we have number letter. So we were given 3 different pieces of paper with numbers and letters on. I got O, 1, and K, and so I decided to do O and K because okay. I thought there were more possibilities with that combination. So I made up a brand called Kind Skin. This was, again, not one of my favorite projects, but that is okay. So quickly going through, this is the image-based logo I made in color, and then we have it with the typography, and then again in the green, and then I had a ton of different variations of what the logo could have looked like, a ton of variations of the final logo in colors I was considering, and then we created another business system for the branding, and then these were some mock-up packaging I created, and it was a moisturizer and a face wash, and then some packaging of bags and a sign. That was that project. And then we created an animation based off of the logo and the branding we had created. And it was my first time doing animation, and I was really not good. I had not used After Effects before, which is the Adobe software you use. I have definitely gotten better since that project, but it was rough, especially the idea that I wanted to do, which was transforming the logo from a flower. Just not the easiest concept to actually bring to reality. Okay, and then we have GRA 361 Visual Communication number 3, which is probably one of my favorite classes I've ever taken. I really enjoyed almost all of the projects that we had to do, and the professors were amazing. Lisa, Nate, Scott, just extremely helpful and just willing to improve upon your idea, not try to like change your idea into what they want it to be, just trying to help improve your original concept, which was amazing because it gave you a lot of control while also making your design work so much better. So the first project was a poster series based off of semiotics. So the different semiotic principles are symbolic, iconic, and indexical. So the first one, symbolic, it's just a very plain poster, but it's the first poster in the series, and it was based off of a lyric from a song, or I think it could have even been a poem, but I chose Peach Pit by Peach Pit, and the line I chose was, "When your orange skin began to glow from a hanging branch in Garden's Hill." So this is symbolic because it's symbolic of the color. And then the next one is iconic. So this is me. She's holding the ripe peaches. The last one, indexical, is the empty basket and the girl is gone because she has left. It was really fun doing this photo shoot with my friend. Also like conceptualizing this like series of photos, and it's definitely like art direction that I want to do in the future. Like I would love to do art direction for photo shoots, for brands and stuff like that. It allowed me to dip my toes into that type of design, and also I love the lyrics that I had chosen. So then the second project was visualizing order, and it was based on categories. So I chose loose leaf tea because I am a big tea drinker as well as a coffee drinker. Me and my parents have a lot of different loose leaf teas, and I titled it Spill the Tea, you know, very YouTube title. And then I categorized the teas by flavor because I thought it was the most interesting way to qualitatively categorize them by. So I have floral, spicy, fruity, citrusy, sweet, creamy, and earthy. And then they are also organized by basically the texture. And then we have narrative of space and time, or a time and space infographic. This is the poster that I submitted for finals. My color palette changed from what it looked like at midterms, and I don't like this final color palette because it looks like Easter threw up all over it. They said I couldn't use the previous color palette because the values weren't consistent with each other, and they need to be for when you're displaying data. Anyways, here's the final version. So my infographic was about different diets and how they differ across countries. and how different diets contribute to climate change. So it's titled The Diet That Helps Fight Climate Change, How Food-Based Dietary Guidelines Differ Across 5 Countries in Regards to Health and the Environment. So I have dietary guidelines for Australia, Canada, United Kingdom, Japan, and obviously the US. So then I also compared the total population of the countries, the beef consumption, the life expectancy at birth, the carbon dioxide emissions. I compared the greenhouse gas emissions of average food consumption. So obviously meat is going to produce way more greenhouse gases than fruit or vegetables. Dietary greenhouse gas emissions, so how the difference in carbon footprint based off of the type of diet you follow. So vegans and vegetarians obviously have way lower carbon footprints than meat eaters. This topic became my senior social issue topic because I got so invested in this and I did so much research into it that I wanted to continue that research. And I just wanted to quickly show what my midterm colors were, because I think it's a cute color palette. It just didn't work. And then we have one of my favorite projects ever, which was the recipe project, and I chose to make mine into a tea towel because you use a tea towel when you're baking. So we had to pick a recipe that incorporated braiding, so either braiding bread or some type of pastry, and so I obviously did kanelbullar that have been braided. I designed this belly band tea towel that I got printed at the ASU print lab at Polytechnic. The way that this was printed on, it's called, the artwork is basically directly printed onto the fabric using a special machine. It's really cool. So you have all the ingredients at the top and then the tools used, and then it's a step-by-step guide for how to make the kanelbullar. So a lot of people chose to present their recipes in different ways. Some people made recipe booklets, some people made folding out brochures. It really varied of how you wanted to show the information in the steps. I thought the tea towel made sense because you use it in the recipe when you're letting the dough rise, and we use tea towels a lot as a family. I was very proud of how that came out. Obviously, it's really expensive to do this type of printing, and I was very lucky that the ASU print lab at Polytechnic had that type of machine that was able to do it. And I'll talk more about that when we get to a later project. I'm very happy with how that project came out. So then we have our packaging project, where we had to redesign the packaging of something from the medicine aisle, which has very small print, lots of information that has to be included on the package because of health and safety regulations. So I chose a computer eye relief because I thought it was pretty ironic, since we spend so much time on the computer when we're designing stuff and doing school. I designed this box, and then it is push out, and it has a little insert with more information, you know, drug facts, uses, warnings, directions, stuff like that. Part of the project was that we had to make it usable for handicapped people, so I thought sliding it would be really easy because you can use other things to make the box pop out instead of having to, you know, grip something to get the top to open up. Here you're just pushing. So I thought it was more user-friendly than the box it was previously in. And it has little eyes on the side to represent the eye, and I wanted to add some texture to the box. I thought the eyes were a cute touch. Not my favorite project. I think it's my least favorite. Yeah, it's definitely my least favorite project from that class, which is interesting because packaging is like my biggest passion right now. I love designing packaging. I think it was my least favorite because there's just so much information that needs to be on this box, and it's such a challenge fitting it all in there while also having it look good and actually be legible for people. So I really think that they gave us the hardest thing that you can design for packaging. After that, I realized, oh, It's actually not that bad designing packaging for other things. And people's packaging really varied how you decided to do the box to make it handicap friendly. Some people design some really amazing things. I would say it's more like product design, how you design the box, and that is not my passion. That is not like my skill set. My box is, very simple. And then the final project is the self-promo project, which had to be a 3D object that you could easily reproduce and send to future employers, people who you might want to get an internship with. So mine came in this box, and on top is my business card that I had designed for my business system, as well as these cards with information. So this has my pattern, that's part of my business system, and on the back is a little bit about me. And then this is about the project that I really liked that a company had designed. And then this is custom tissue paper that I stamped myself. And then these little horses. So these are dalahästar, which are symbols of luck in Sweden, and I painted them by hand. This is basically the pattern of my business system. And then we have an Oatly, which is the project of the design firm. Cute little horse. And then this has my information, and then let's collaborate. Obviously the painting could have been better, but the idea of these horses I'm really proud of, and I like how it came out in the complete form. Just the painting could have been improved on if I had more time or just better delegated my time, but I'm happy with the project nonetheless. So now on to second semester, junior year, the spring semester. You have 3 graphic design classes. 2 of them are studio classes. You have GRA 345, which is design rhetoric. And this is a lecture-based class. You go over a variety of things from color psychology to writing cover letters. It's just a mishmash of design things that are good to know. And then we have GRA 322, technology for design number 2. I don't have anything physical to show for this part, so it'll be on the screen. Our first project was the kinetic typography animation. So another project where we had to use After Effects. It was basically a lyric video, I guess, and I chose the popular TikTok song Dissolve because I thought it would be easy to translate the lyrics into imagery based off of the words and stuff. I think the animation turned out okay. Obviously it's not my best work. It was definitely better than my previous animation. And then we had to do a typography study, which was more like layout design, and we had to hand bind a book. It was a pretty small book, but we put that together. That was the last project we did before COVID happened. So I don't have this book because my teacher kept it. It's kind of sad thinking back about it that was the last project we did in person. I just remember like all of us being in studio the night before it was due, like all figuring out how to bind it. And that's when you realize like we are all in this together and we are all gonna succeed if we depend on each other. It really shows you like everyone is there to help you succeed. And then we have the infamous program book, which is a book of all the projects you've done in the design program up until then. And I think my book was, it was over 300 pages. Yeah, it was definitely over 300 pages. It helped if you had all of your files together, and then it was just creating a system, a layout that worked for all the different projects you had, and then just plugging all the content and images in. And we were also supposed to incorporate COVID and our experience in the design program, and because of how our learning situation had switched to being completely online, I had a graph in part of the book showing the amount of COVID cases and deaths in Arizona at the time, and it kind of put things into like perspective of what we were going through at the same time that we were working. I did not get my program book printed. Usually you do. Usually you have to bind it yourself with like perfect bind it which would have been insane. Kind of looked out on not having to get it printed because that would have been really expensive. And then the last project was an alumni website, which we didn't have to code, thank God, but we just had to create what it would basically look like in Adobe XD, which basically just taught you like how to size things, what is an optimal size for a button, for type, you know, stuff like that, and how to just lay out things on a page, on a website page. And we had to translate a web version into a mobile version. It definitely helped with like when we had to put together our own website, and I wouldn't mind doing like XD design as long as I don't have to do any coding. And then we have GRA 362 Visual Communication number 4. Our first project was interdisciplinary teamwork, or the cluster project. This was a project that all of the students in the Herberger Design School had to do. We were put into teams made up of all different majors. There was one other graphic design student in my team named Vita, and then there was an interior designer, then there was one other Herberger student, and then like one medical studies person who was not in Herberger who chose to do this as like a class credit. Our group was actually pretty good. Some teams really let all the graphic designers do all the work because this wasn't part of their grade, and for us it was. I think the graphic designers did the majority of the work in most of the teams. It wasn't the prettiest project because we literally had like 3 days to put it together. Our team made it to the semifinals, and we had to put together another presentation in like 30 minutes, which we presented to judges, and we ended up getting 3rd place, which was amazing. We even got some money, a couple $100s, which is always nice. I'm really happy with how it turned out just because we were able to accomplish something in a really short time frame. And then we have our client projects. These are supposed to simulate being in the real world, working with actual clients. And this is the first time a lot of students work with actual clients and not just do projects for fun or for their teachers. So our first client was the Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration Committee at ASU. This is an event that goes on every year to celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. And it was our job to create the branding for the next year's celebration. So we actually got to attend that year's celebration and get to see what the previous juniors had designed and how it would actually get put to use at the celebration. My team, Ardent, which consisted of Calvin, Ashley, Sydney, and I, we put together a theme based off of the quote, "How long?" said by Martin Luther King Jr. And it depicted time through the use of shadows and was to represent how long until struggles that people currently face are improved upon. So we also got into the semifinals for this project, and we got to present a second time in the Sun Devil Stadium, which was pretty cool. We didn't end up winning, which is okay. It was just exciting and nerve-wracking to get to present, but it's really great practice for presenting your ideas to a client, seeing if they match what your client has in mind. So the second client we had was Earnest and Humble Coffee. This was a company that reached out to the design school and wanted some packaging designed. I just have some of our process. These weren't our final things or anything. Pretty close to our final things, but we created a postcard that would be included in boxes of coffee orders that are shipped out. This is what we had in mind for the coffee packaging, and we were trying to be as cost efficient as possible because it was a small startup company, and so we thought a sticker wrap would be the cheapest option. And then we had to design K-cups and a box, a shipping box. So we have the K-cups and then the box, and getting it printed both on the inside and outside would have been really expensive. So our final version, we just ended up doing a sticker on the box. Definitely not the most attractive thing at all, but when you're a small company, you have to make do with the most cost-efficient thing. Design sometimes has to be more practical than it can be beautiful. And these are more K-cup tops. The client already had some basic branding that we could improve upon, and we definitely did that. But really, it was just great working in our team. Everyone got along so well, and we really depended on each other. I think we were proud with what we created as a team, and obviously we kind of continued to refine it on our own after that for finals. But yeah, it was a great project, and it was actually interesting because the first time the client came in, he brought in some packaging that he liked and that he wanted a similar look to, and one of the packages he brought in was packaging from the Queen Creek Olive Mill, which is where I was working at the time as a graphic designer. So I thought I had a pretty good idea of what he wanted, since one of his inspiration things was where I worked. That was pretty funny. Our final client was our professors. It was the currency project, and I know a couple other universities have this project. One of the universities being Chapman University, where Lindsey Rem went for graphic design. And we had to pick a theme for the currency, and my theme was American pioneers in the automobile industry. So I had Henry Ford and Ransom Olds. Henry Ford obviously made the Model T, and Ransom Olds made the Curve Dash Oldsmobile, and they were pioneers in the automobile industry. And obviously everyone's currency looked really different based off of the topic they had chose. The currency was supposed to include security features and all the other seals and the Secretary of Treasury signature that current currency has. Some people did some really cool things with the security features, which I was very impressed by. But yeah, that's the end of junior year. So this is first semester, senior year, the fall semester. Senior year was all online. So I really don't have any projects to show you physically because everything was submitted digitally. So you have 3 graphic design classes your senior year fall semester. A lot of us, almost all of us, had 4 this semester because a lot of us weren't able to secure an internship over the summer because of COVID. A lot of design firms and companies were not accepting interns because they had to scale back their company or just weren't accepting interns at the time. Some people were still able to secure internships, and they did it all over Zoom basically, but I decided to do an independent study to make up those 2 internship credits with Professor Fouché. So I created a cookbook, my own cookbook. This is my face, this is my cookbook. It has 20 plant-based recipes. This is the hardcover copy that I had printed just for myself. These cookbooks are on sale in my online store, and you can buy them through Blurb. So it has an about the author on the back, and I'll show you the insides, title page. It has breakfast recipes, a lot of pastries, and then some like meals at the back. And basically it got me to do food photography, illustration, layout design, some typography with the titles and stuff. I'm really proud of how a lot of these photos turned out. Every time there was a new section, I did a spread of illustrations. The strawberry cake, iconic. Red velvet cupcakes, literally my favorite cupcake recipe. Waffles, you know. I have a big sweet tooth, so it's a lot of sweet things in here. I also have a spread talking about the carbon footprint of different diets because I wanted to incorporate the research I had done for my social issue topic into the cookbook, since these were plant-based recipes, which promotes a lower carbon footprint diet. So yeah, that was an extremely time-consuming project that I did for a 2-credit class. So yeah, that's that. And then we have GRA 421 exhibit design. This class required us to use SketchUp, which is a really interesting software. A lot of interior designers use this, and honestly, I don't know of that many graphic designers that use SketchUp, but we did a simple space. It consisted of a pyramid, a chair, a sphere, a rectangular box, and then like the space itself, and we had to create it physically, which I chose to do with wood, which not the easiest. I basically made it in my dad's garage using all of his tools, and then we had to create it in SketchUp, which was actually simpler than creating it physically. So that was the first project. And then we had to do a pop-up retail space based on a retail product that we selected. This could have been, you know, any type of company. Some people chose sunglasses, some people did skincare, some people did shoes, you know, it really varied. Someone even did like Blue Apron, really varied. But we had to use shipping containers as the structure in SketchUp, which was pretty constraining, but people were really creative with it, especially if you knew how to use SketchUp well. I chose to do an Alla Spa pop-up because I worked for Alla Spa and we were doing a rebrand at the time, and I thought it would be cool to include the products that we were rebranding at the time, which were lip balms, and then we had 2 new soaps that we're launching. I just wanted to read some of the stuff from the project brief. So the objective was to provide clean, quality, ethical skincare products to health-conscious individuals looking for a sustainable and natural skincare line. The target audience were females 18 to 35 that want products that are sustainable, transparent, and natural. So then we created the pop-up retail space in SketchUp. You basically use the items that SketchUp comes with, or you design it yourself, which is way harder. But yeah, I'm happy with how it turned out. I showed it to Joey, who is the director of Alla Spa, and she really liked it. While they're not going to use it for like a physical location, I think it helped give her an idea of what could be the future of Alla Spa, which is exciting. And then we had to create a book that includes the brand guidelines, all the different components of the SketchUp model. And the final project for exhibit design was a museum exhibition. And I chose my museum exhibition to be about Pets och Findus, which is a children's book series created by a Swedish author. I grew up reading this book series, and I thought it would just be something fun and cute to design. So I chose the location of my museum to be at the Nordic Museum in Seattle, Washington, which I had visited like a year ago. We had a predetermined space that we could use, and we had to create a poster series promoting the museum exhibition, as well as some merch and a ticket, and then obviously the physical space itself. And then to go along with it, the book that includes the branding for the exhibit, what the exhibit is about, any special features. So I enjoyed the projects because I got to make them about topics I actually enjoyed. I don't think I'll be doing that much exhibit design. Obviously, if I'm working for a company and doing their branding, of course it's going to translate to a physical retail space if they're selling products. So then the next class is GRA 422, Motion Graphics and Interaction Design. So this was heavily After Effects and Premiere Pro. It was animation and video editing. I'm decent at video editing because I have some experience, but this is definitely where I got good at animation because I had to put so much time into these projects. The first one was a designer research. It was just a quick presentation about a designer that does animation work. So I chose a Swedish designer who does really cool, satisfying yet eerie looping animations. It's really cool. You should go check them out. And then our second project was poster in motion. So I chose an Alt-J poster that had been designed for one of their tour dates, and I just animated it. It's definitely not perfect, but I definitely got better at animation because of it. I still like the song after listening to it over and over and over for this project. And then we had to do a cinemagraph, which is basically a GIF or GIF, however you say it. So I just did looping GIF of coffee dripping, and I did a little set design for it, you know, made it look like I was baking, and I'm pretty proud of how it turned out. It was a quick project. And then we had our self-promotion video, which I watched it recently when I was putting together my website, and I started crying when I was watching it because I was really proud of how it turned out. I love the song that I used for it, Sun Models by Odessa. I just love how it turned out. out because I love the projects that I feature in it. And I also include like some lifestyle footage weaved into it, so it's not just project after project. They kind of interweave somehow. Very proud of how it came out, and you can watch the full thing up here. I recommend you doing that. It's not too long. I think it's really interesting, obviously. And then our final project for that class was an instructional how-to video. I chose to do mine on how to make a strawberry cake. It's the same one that's in my cookbook, and I basically just show how to bake one. I did illustrations of all the ingredients. The instructions kind of pop up throughout the video while actually showing me baking it. It was a pretty easy video to put together. Those are the projects for our motion graphics class. So the final class is GRA 461 Visual Communication number 5. So I think this class was altered the most because of COVID, because it previously consisted of a lot of in-person events like the poster show, which the seniors put a ton of effort into because it's a big part of raising money towards the senior exhibition at the end of the year. But because of COVID, we weren't really sure if we were going to have a poster show and what it was going to look like. The first semester of senior year, we had a social issue presentation due at the end of the semester, and it basically included all of our data that we had collected, all of our research. We created a narrative with all the data, and then we presented it to professors and then also some guest designers, which were previous students. It's always fun to see people that were in the program previously who have gone through the same stuff as you. And like I said previously, my social issue was about dietary carbon footprints. I just continued the research that I had previously done. It kind of shifted away from dietary guidelines of different countries and more towards how different diets contribute to climate change. I went into the research of production of food and food miles, which is the carbon footprint of food being transported, stuff like that. Actually, the first project we did that semester was an infographic. It was a really quick project that was due like a week after it was assigned, which is very quick because usually projects take the entire semester and are due at the end. So I think this was more like a quick warm-up, and it was an infographic of something we did over the summer. I chose to do an infographic about the time I ran 50 miles in 3 days. Why did I do that? I don't know, just to prove to myself that I could do it. I thought it would be really easy to create an infographic on because I had so much data from my Apple Watch. Obviously, it collects a lot of information like time, distance, elevation, temperature, humidity. I had a lot of data from this, so I thought it would be an interesting thing to create an infographic about. And it was interesting to see how these professors wanted infographics to look like compared to our professors junior year when we were doing our time and space infographic. How junior year they stressed about not having chart junk and stuff that was merely decorative, while senior year our professors were kind of pushing for us to have decorative, visually nice elements, not just stuff that was purely there to communicate data. And then the final project was our clock project, which is a really symbolic project of senior year. You basically translate your social issue into a physical clock. I was really looking forward to doing this project and putting together a physical clock, and all of a sudden, because of COVID, we weren't doing physical clocks and we were instead animating a clock. And I was like, great, that is sarcasm. I don't love how this project came out. That's what happens with COVID. On to second semester, senior year. My last semester at ASU. So you have 3 graphic design classes. 2 of them are studio classes. I'll start off with GRA 494, which was actually a topic class that we got to choose from. So the different options were photography, packaging, and sustainable design. I had already done a lot of photography work in my cookbook, so I decided not to do do that one. While I'm interested in sustainable design, I thought packaging would be the most beneficial for me because I want to continue to pursue packaging design, and I thought my work outside of school would benefit from this class. I chose the packaging development and branding class, and we redesigned a packaging of our choice. We even renamed the brand and then completely redid the packaging of the product. So the product I chose was matcha. The company I rebranded was Mighty Leaf Tea, and I rebranded it as Moondust Matcha. Created a new logo based off of this name, and then I created packaging that matched the new branding of the company. Instead of having it in a tin container, I put it in paper tubes because that's more environmentally friendly. I thought it was easier to open. I had actually owned one of those tins before, and I found it really hard to open the top. So that was my package redesign. And then we have GRA 424 Advanced Media. So this class was supposed to consist of 3 projects. One of them got dropped because the teacher realized that because of all the work we were doing for our visual communication number 6 class, that it was kind of too much to expect from us, especially with COVID still going on and us doing everything virtually. The class consisted of 2 projects, our portfolio website, which you can check mine out at claraxmatilda.com, and this class was extremely useful in helping us get ready for applying for jobs at design firms and looking for freelance work. It gave us a reason to actually put time into putting our portfolio website together during senior year, so we would have it ready for when we would apply for future jobs. I ended up using Squarespace to put my website together. I know a couple other people that use Squarespace. One of my friends, Sydney, she used Wix, and her website is beautiful. Like, seriously, it looked so good. And then some people decided to use WordPress, which I think it's a little bit more complicated. You have to buy a plugin that does like the coding for the design for you. So I just chose not to do WordPress because I knew I also wanted to set up a shop on my website. So I thought it would be easier just to use Squarespace. And I know a lot of artists and designers use Squarespace and find it really easy to use. So I decided to use it, and I'm happy with how my website came out. So then we also got to do a personal project for advanced media. So this really could be anything that you thought would help improve your portfolio. Some people chose to redo their business system because they felt their design style had changed in that period of time since they had done it, and they wanted it to match more their website, stuff like that. Other people chose to do brand guides. It really varied what people chose to do. So I chose to do 2 projects because I couldn't decide which one I wanted to do. So I did a Phoenix coffee guide, which I was basically gonna do anyways, and I created a poster for it with local coffee shops in the Phoenix area. And then I also created a guide on my Instagram that you can check out with 30 different Phoenix local coffee shops that I regularly go to and that got me through college. The plan is to also create an Instagram story highlight of all the coffee shops I go to, but I'm really proud of the Instagram guide I put together, and hopefully a lot of people use it to discover new coffee shops. Support local coffee shops instead of going to Starbucks, because Starbucks tastes like crap anyways. And then I also want to create a YouTube video of all my favorite coffee shops. We'll see if that happens before I leave. That was part of the plan too. And then the other project I chose to do was a tea towel series. So I wanted to expand on the tea towel that I had created junior year and do more of the recipes that were in my cookbook. So I did 5 tea towels total. I basically redid this one without the braiding because that's not that common for kanelbullar. And then I chose to do a peach cake as one of the tea towels, semlor, lussekatter, the strawberry cake, and then just updating, like I said, this. So I illustrated all of the ingredients, all of the tools, all of the steps to make the recipes, laid them out. I designed belly bands for them, which is like part of the packaging. And I wanted to get these tea towels printed, but it was really expensive when I got them printed at the ASU Digital Lab, just because the type of printing that it is. And I spent a lot of time researching places online, but I really couldn't find any that were cheap enough to do. I found one place in LA, but it had a huge fabric minimum, like hundreds of yards, and obviously that would have cost hundreds of dollars to do, and I'm not sure I would have gotten these tea towels, so I ended up not getting them printed, but I'm glad I have the designs already made so that I can get them printed if I ever do find a vendor to do it. So yeah, that was advanced media, and then we have GRA 462, visual communication, number 6. Within the class we have GDSSA, which is the Graphic Design Senior Student Association. These people work with the professors to kind of decide what's best for the class. These were people that we elected. They were talking to Al, our professor, and they decided that we should still put on the poster show, even though it was already second semester, and usually it put together during first semester. And in like, I don't know, it was like 4 or 5 weeks, we put together a poster show that was completely virtual. We still had a live auction, and then the rest of the posters that we got donated from designers and design firms were auctioned off in a silent auction that ended a week after the website was launched. So it was a really interesting experience because usually all the poster shows are in person and they're one night, and so having this be a full week event was the first of its kind. We ended up raising a good amount of money that we used toward our senior exhibit, and what I contributed to this was I was part of the marketing committee. I thought it would be a good fit for me because I have a minor in digital audiences, and I got elected to be leader of the marketing committee. So I was part of leader meetings with leaders of all the other committees like website, publications, events. So we basically did all the marketing for the event. We marketed on social media, including Facebook and Instagram, and then we also created newsletters that told people about the show. So then our senior exhibit, this one, it was interesting. Usually this is an in-person event too. Usually people build structures for this. Usually everything is laser cut out of wood, and our event was completely virtual because of COVID. So what we ended up doing was we partnered with a website called VR All Art, and we had our virtual exhibit hosted on their website. So we designed our structures in SketchUp, and then we sent them to VR All Art to be put into like a virtual space. That was our senior exhibit. It was a virtual space. It was obviously kind of disappointing because it's like the end of 4 years and our final thing is a virtual event that you can go on and click through. So again, for the virtual exhibit, I was part of the marketing committee. So I did all the promotional stuff along with the rest of my committee. Again, we used Facebook and Instagram to promote it, as well as a newsletter. The most exciting thing about the virtual exhibit though was we got in touch with Wonder Spaces in Scottsdale, and they have VR headset that we were able to use to be able to see our virtual exhibit and kind of like walk through it virtually. And I think that kind of helped make up for the event not being in person. While it's not the same thing as building the structures for the exhibit and putting it together in person in studio with everyone, it was something to kind of commemorate the end of our experience in the design program and a way to see our exhibit in some sort of physical but virtual manner. And obviously, to go along with all the work that we did, we had a senior book, which was an accumulation of all the projects that we did that year for our visual communication classes. So that included our presentation, our cloth, the poster show, the virtual exhibit, and then our committee work for those events. Oh, and I also wanted to mention that we designed posters for both the poster show and the virtual exhibit. I'll put on screen the ones I designed. Neither of my posters were picked, but that is completely fine because I think the posters that were selected were great representations of what we wanted the events to represent and be about. That is all the projects I did in my 4 years of undergrad at ASU in the graphic design program. I hope this gives you an insight into what the design program is like and the types of projects you'll do. I think it's really interesting seeing how projects differ yet are the same compared to different design programs at other universities. The majority of what I knew about a graphic design program came from Lindsey Rem's videos, and she went to Chapman University. And obviously the projects and what the design programs teach really differ across each university. I was watching Cat Creature's videos also around that time. She was studying textile design, but it kind of gave an insight into what RISD taught and how it would teach design principles. And recently I've been watching Radhia's videos, or Knives Meow, and she went to SVA and she got a degree in illustration. So obviously I was kind of piecing together what a design program might look like at any university. So I really hope this video gives insight into what to expect, and I hope it encourages some people to apply to the program, pursue graphic design potentially. I'm really happy with what I learned these past 4 years at ASU. I couldn't be more thankful for my professors, my peers, my family and friends. I'm really excited for what's to come and the projects I'll pursue in the future and the brands I'll work with to design their packaging and such. I hope you guys follow along my journey of being a graphic designer, and don't forget to check out the links in the description, subscribe, leave a like if you like this video. Stay tuned for more content. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.